The objective of the Brost Servicing Noise Management Program is the identification and control of all noise hazard areas. Our primary concern is the protection of employees who have the potential to develop noise-induced hearing loss. This program applies to all employees who work in noise hazard areas or who have the potential to develop noise-induced hearing loss as a result of their occupation. Nuisance noise, which may be irritating or annoying to some people, but which is not loud enough to be associated with noise-induced hearing loss, does not fall under this program. What are the potential hazards associated with noise? First, noise-induced hearing loss affects a person's ability to hear higher frequency sounds, but since normal speech does not use these high frequencies, little hearing change is noticed. With continued exposure, hearing deteriorates, and eventually the loss spreads into those lower frequencies involved in speech. Once hearing is lost, it cannot be replaced or repaired. It is vital that work-related hearing loss be prevented. Brost Servicing has the legislated duty to ensure that all reasonably practicable measures are used to reduce the noise to which workers are exposed in areas of the worksite where workers may be present. The following shall be designed and constructed in such a way that continuous noise levels generated do not exceed 85 decibels or are as low as reasonably practicable. A new worksite or work area, significant physical alterations, renovations, or repairs to an existing worksite or work area, a work process introduced to the worksite or the work area, significant equipment introduced to the worksite or the work area. Brost Servicing must ensure that a worker's exposure to noise at a worksite does not exceed the noise exposure limits in Schedule 3, Table 1 of the Alberta Occupational Health and Safety Code and a noise level exposure that exceeds 85 decibels. Brost Servicing will ensure that all workers that are exposed to excess noise, that is, noise exceeding the noise exposure limits identified in Schedule 3, Table 1 of the Alberta Occupational Health and Safety Code, participate in the company's hearing conservation program, which will include the following elements: procedures for addressing noise at the worksite, identification of work areas at the worksite where noise may exceed the noise exposure limits, procedures for measuring worker exposure to noise, procedures for educating workers in the hazards of exposure to excess noise, the methods of noise control to be used, training workers in the correct use of noise control measures and hearing protection devices, the selection, use, and maintenance of hearing protection devices to be used and worn by workers, posting of suitable warning signs in any work area where the noise level exceeds 85 decibels, the requirement for audiometric testing and the maintenance of audiometric test records, and an annual review of the noise management program that includes consideration of audiometric testing data received. If workers are or may be exposed to a noise at a worksite or a work area in excess of 82 decibels, Brost Servicing shall ensure that a noise exposure assessment is conducted in accordance with CSA Standard Z 107.56-18, Measurement of Noise Exposure. The noise exposure assessment shall be performed using a noise dosimeter and will meet the requirements of Part 16 of the Alberta Occupational Health and Safety Code. The assessment must be conducted and interpreted by a competent person who is trained in conducting noise exposure assessments, is trained in the calibration, operation, and maintenance of the equipment used in conducting noise exposure measurements, and can demonstrate an understanding of the method used for measure. The noise exposure assessment will be updated anytime there is a change in equipment, process, or anything that affects the noise level or the length of time the worker is exposed to noise. The record of noise exposure assessment must include the sound level readings measured, the dates of the measurements, the task of workers or occupations evaluated, the type of measuring equipment used, the work area evaluated, and the date the assessment was completed. A copy of the noise exposure assessment shall be available upon request to an affected worker or an occupational health and safety officer, and must be retained by the company for at least 3 years from the date the assessment was completed. Brost Well Servicing shall provide at the expense of the company the following audiometric tests for workers who are or may be exposed to excess noise at a work site or in a work area. An initial baseline test as soon as reasonably practicable, but not later than 6 months after the worker is employed, or within 6 months after a worker is or may be exposed to excess noise because of a change in the worker's duties or process conditions. A test not more than 12 months after the initial baseline test, and a test every second year after the date of the audiometric test undertaken not more than 12 months after the initial baseline test. Workers undergoing audiometric testing shall be deemed to be at work during the times when the worker is traveling to and from the audiometric test and undergoing the audiometric test. Training shall be provided to all Brost Well Servicing employees required to use any type of hearing protector in the fit, care, and the use of the hearing protector. Training will be delivered to workers by a trained, competent employee designated by Brost Well Servicing or by a competent third-party trainer. The training provided will include the following: how noise-induced hearing loss occurs and how to prevent it, the hazards of exposure to excess noise, the correct use of established control measures and hearing protection, and training in the selection, use, and maintenance of hearing protection equipment required to be used at a work site in accordance with the manufacturer's specifications. Brost Well Servicing shall ensure that all reasonably practicable measures are used to eliminate or reduce the noise to which workers are exposed in areas of the worksite where workers may be present. Hazard controls will be implemented wherever feasible following the hierarchy of controls, that is, engineering controls, administrative controls, and personal protective equipment controls. Engineering controls that have been found effective in eliminating or reducing noise levels involve modifying or replacing equipment or making related physical changes at the noise source or along the transmission path to reduce the noise level at the worker's ear. Examples of inexpensive, effective engineering controls include some of the following: selecting low noise tools and machinery, maintaining and lubricating machinery and equipment, placing a barrier between the noise source and the employee, such as sound walls or curtains, and enclose or isolate the noise source. Administrative controls are changes in the workplace or schedule that reduce or eliminate the worker exposure to noise. Examples include operating noisy machines during shifts when fewer people are exposed, limiting the amount of time a person spends at a noise source, providing quiet areas where workers can gain relief from hazardous noise sources. Controlling noise exposure through distance is often an effective yet simple and inexpensive administrative control. Specifically, for every doubling of the distance between the source of noise and the worker, the noise is decreased by 6 decibels. Hazard signage shall be posted wherever workers are or may be exposed to excess noise at a work site. Brost well servicing shall provide hearing protection equipment to workers exposed to excess noise that meets the requirements of CSA Standard Z 94.2-M1984, hearing protectors, as amended from time to time, is of the appropriate class and grade as described in Schedule 3, Table 2 of the Alberta Occupational Health and Safety Code, and prevents the employee using the hearing protector from being exposed to a level of sound that exceeds the limits. It will be the responsibility of Brost well servicing managers and supervisors to ensure that affected workers wear and use required hearing protection equipment. Workers who are provided with hearing protection equipment must wear and use the equipment in accordance with the training provided by Brost well servicing. Manager and supervisor responsibilities include the following: facilitate and/or provide proper instruction to their workers on the company's noise management and hearing conservation programs, and in the use, care, and maintenance of the required personal protective equipment. Ensure that affected workers wear and use required hearing protection. Ensure that audiometric testing is conducted in accordance with legislated requirements. Perform noise exposure assessments if workers are or may be exposed to noise at a worksite in excess of 82 decibels and the noise exposure limits identified in Schedule 3, Table 1. Ensure the noise management, hearing conservation, and personal protective equipment programs have been reviewed, are understood and adhered to by all employees and contractors. Evaluate the noise management and hearing conservation programs at least once annually. Worker responsibilities include complying with the Brost well servicing, noise management, hearing conservation, and personal protective equipment programs, including training. Wear and use all required hearing protection to minimize the risk of excessive noise. Never alter PPE under any circumstance. Report any health concerns to your supervisor. Take appropriate breaks when 85 decibels is exceeded. Position signs and barricades if other workers are present. Dispose of foam earplugs into garbage receptacles. The ground is not appropriate.